Sorry about that. The wind got it. Yeah, I'm not going into that area. Yep. Well, I get the main ones. Those are, you know, this here, and this, and upstairs. You know, those are the main ones.
Yeah.
That I'll try and do. I'm sure I can. Not that we ever do much there, but that's okay.
I'm hopeful that it makes a difference that it looks here.
Well, we'll give it a whirl.
But I'm gonna back it up here.
All right, well, I'm getting started, so go for it. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Well, I'm doing pretty good considering.
I'm not hearing you. You know what? I know what the problem is. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, I can hear you now. It's good when you turn on the sound. It actually allows you to speak.
exactly. Yeah, considering I've been locked in this house since February the 20th, I'm doing pretty good.
That's not bad. I've been in this since March 4th. I came back
Yep.
from Egypt and I haven't left yet.
Yeah.
And how are you?
There's Kevin.
Yep. How are you
Hey,
doing?
Charlie. How you guys doing?
Good. Are you locked up, Kevin?
Not really. Somewhat. Obviously, we're keeping travel to a minimum yet, but I've been seeing customers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're not allowed to go out until August 1st.
Oh wow.
I mean, there are people in the street, but
Sure.
they can only be in the street as long as they're going to the grocery store or coming back. You know,
Yeah.
Supposedly, you know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I get out to go to the grocery store and walk my dog. And it's
Well,
driving
I don't
me-
go to the grocery store.
it's driving
I
me
have
crazy.
I have a secretary, personal assistant, really, and she does my shopping for me, so I don't have to go out, you know?
Slick.
I actually like going out because it gives me a chance to see what the hell the outside world is like.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a rooftop terrace for that.
Oh, I spend most of my day in my backyard hanging out and pull a computer out there and get some work done.
Yeah, I've got a 365-degree view of all the mountains around me, so I'm,
Nice.
I'm fine. And from my house, I can see, I'm on the second floor, and I can see out windows on either side, so I can see people and, cars, and it's not like I'm totally isolated,
No.
But I prefer this to being sick
Yeah, for sure.
We
or
had-
dead.
What was interesting, we have friends whose grandson turned 20, so they had a party.
No.
All of them, including our friends, all of them came down with it, and they're still sick as dogs right now. It's over 2 weeks, and they're miserable. And it's like, what were you thinking? I mean, you're dealing with a 20-year-old, really?
Yeah.
Oh, and you hugged him?
Yeah.
All righty. And so
I have a son.
they're
I have
just,
a son who lives in Austin, Texas, who's divorced or getting a divorce from his wife. And they have an 8-year-old boy together. There are other kids involved on her side. And both of them continue to work because they're in jobs that, are essential. And so he learned last week that his ex-wife, the mother of the boy, is tested positive for coronavirus. She's 32. And Jarrell, my son, had custody that week of the boy. So maybe he's not infected, okay? So I said, well, you got a problem on your hands because the family courts are going to require you to return that boy, to the mother at the end of the week, and you can't do that. So you need to find out what the rules are on that. And if you have to keep him at your house, you need to keep him, okay? And he said, well, he's not showing any symptoms, so he's probably okay. And I said, Jarrell, have you not been listening to the news? Symptoms may not be present, but the coronavirus is everywhere,
Yep.
So I don't know what that boy's thinking, but I'm trying to help him. But he's 30 years old,
So when you're on the younger side, you don't believe it's going to affect you.
Exactly.
And that's where the big spike is now in the 25 to 35-year-old range. It's gone crazy. My daughter lives in Austin. They've closed down pretty much everything, even though they didn't have to close down all the restaurants. No one's really going now because they're spiking like crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, Brian, I did get the package you sent me. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Good morning, everybody. Yeah.
Brian, and Marty, oh, Marty, you're with Chromaline. Okay. So you're just here to check on Kevin.
Exactly.
Kevin, do you need backup?
Nope.
I didn't think so.
Wasn't sure. Yeah, I'm actually going to try and go to a shop tomorrow, I think, for the first time. I'll see what that's like. So I'm going to try out the inks, but
Good.
hope to at least get some screenshot and get some things moving along. I've got to put together a couple of things that I'm working on, and I need to get to a factory, much as I am not thrilled about getting out.
Yeah.
But, you know, got to do what you got to do. But I'm a big believer. I mean, I put on my mask. What I need to do is a self-portrait for COVID-19. Between the mask and sunglasses and a hat, it's like, oh, easy self-portrait. Not much involved there.
Yeah. No, I've got a close friend that you talk about gathering friends and stuff, and they got together for Memorial Day, and sure as shooting, his wife came down. She's in her mid-60s, and she's been in the hospital for 3 weeks now. I'm praying and hoping that she gets out of ICU today. She's on the mend, but yeah, again, it's for real. I think I told you guys the last time we were together, or a couple of times ago. I had it in January, and you know, luckily was able to kick it. But yeah, there's a lot of folks that are not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Friends of ours, I think there were 15 of them at the party. 12 of them came down with it.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
you know, and one was asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic.
That's a word that I hate, but nevertheless. But you know, our friends are well into their 60s. Not a good time to get sick. They fortunately don't have to go to the hospital, but they've been in bed for almost 2 weeks now. Crazy. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Charlie?
Good. I'm hoping we get a couple more people showing up, because bunch of them got invited. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, I don't know if you got any word from Scott at the DAX show for the Chicago show.
I haven't heard yet.
Okay. I have, but I can't tell you what it is, but it's not anything good. How's that sound?
Yeah, I mean, I've been assuming all along that it's going to be canceled. That's what I've been, just the assumption with everything going on everywhere. I would assume it's going to be canceled.
Well, you know, I mean, some places are trying. I've been in touch with Vastex, and I'm supposed to do a workshop for them, and they've already had a workshop. But when they showed the photo of it, it's like one person per table.
Yeah.
And they're just spread out all over the place, which is a great thing. Hello?
Guess you've all heard the SGA canceled.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that was just one of those things that you knew was going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you know Johnny Shell, but he is no longer with SGIA.
Neither's Dan Marks.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean,
and Marcy Everberry's been let go at Impressions.
that was yesterday, yeah.
yeah, I saw that yesterday.
There's probably a lot of other people that, you know, because they're not in the upper echelon, we have not heard. But there's probably a lot of people been affected and lost their jobs because of this.
I'm sure that there are a lot of people who aren't coming back to work because they're not being asked to come back. I think the toughest one is those who are home, who are collecting unemployment and getting more money than when they were working.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the question is, how do you get them back? And then the question, the other side of it is, if they don't want to come back now, do you really want them back later?
Yeah.
And it's a tough one.
I'm worried about, you know, our laws here in Mexico are different than they are in the U.S. But, you know, how many of those people in the U.S. are not getting paid at all? And how are they living? You
Right.
know?
It's tough. You know, I mean, it's kind of like you you better have a bank account. And if you don't, you're in deep trouble.
Well, here in Mexico, even though the businesses are all shut down, not nationwide, but most cities are shut down, like Cuernavaca. But every business in Cuernavaca is having to pay their employees full salary until August 1st.
Wow.
And the business is shut down. That's the law.
But you know, the question is,
And you can't fire them.
when you tap out, what do?
Right.
Declare bankruptcy?
No, you have to borrow money from the government, or from the bank or the government, but you have to borrow money to keep paying those employees.
Wow.
We are a pro-employee country here, and we have to support, the workers. That's the law, and you can't fire them.
Hell,
If you do fire them, if you have just cause for firing somebody here, you have to give them 3 months salary. And then if they've only been there 1 year, if they've been there more than 1 year, it increases. Okay. But from the first year, you have to pay them 3 months salary, and you have to give them their, all their bonuses and their vacation time and so forth. So you can't afford to fire them. You can't afford to keep them. But so you have to borrow money if you live here.
Mm.
I have a friend in Germany American guy who opened up years and years ago. Matter of fact, he just retired out, but had a screen print shop, had a blank shirt distribution. You can't fire anyone in Germany. The way he got rid of his employees, he literally closed the screen print shop and eliminated it. That was the only way you could get rid of them.
Yeah.
And never opened it again. Kept his supply house or his blank shirt distribution. But, the day you take on a job in Germany, you're entitled to 4 or 5 weeks vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day one.
Yeah.
Mm.
I wonder if I can get anything from doing some work in Germany. I'm hoping that they are willing to throw some money in my direction.
Do you, Charlie, do you know our mutual friend, I hope, over in Celaya, Mexico?
What's his name?
Come on, let's see how good your memory is. From St.
Roberto.
Louis.
Roberto.
No,
No.
he's a gringo from St. Louis.
Huh?
A gringo from St. Louis.
Oh,
Greenard.
yes. And I do know Alan.
Alan.
Yeah.
And Alan did that. He closed that factory up in St. Louis because he had a better deal in Mexico, and the business was established and going good, and and then he got sued by the workers for closing the factory, even though he offered them all this money to leave. He offered them jobs if they wanted to move to Mexico and continue working. He offered them everything they wanted, and still they sued him in court, and he lost millions of dollars.
Is that right?
And he did nothing wrong.
Welcome to the world.
I know. You can't avoid lawsuits.
Oh, well. Got a question for you, Kevin. I got a client of mine that's looking at going to direct to screen.
Yeah.
So and actually I asked him if he'd come on to this because I thought it'd be important for him to speak to you. But of course, it's one of those weird times of the day, I guess. You have specific emulsions for the different direct to screen systems? In other words, whether they're ink or whether they're wax?
Not necessarily. I mean, it really comes down to mostly the process that they're printing. So, if they're printing water-based, obviously it has to be a water-resistant emulsion. Plastisol can be anything. But there are some that are going to react better with, say, like the ink system. And a lot of that goes back to humidity resistance. We've seen a vast difference between emulsions when people are using, say, like the MNRI image with the wax system, that certain ones under humid conditions tend to spread a little bit more. Whereas the wax systems, wax goes down and solidifies pretty quick, and you don't get that spreading as much. So there's certain emulsions that I would recommend, like our Chromatech WR, Lime, Chroma Blue, any of those have worked extremely well with any of the ink systems that are out there.
So if you were in a humid climate, first of all, I know you should be air conditioning your your system.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm not sure how many people initially do. I know they eventually will come around to it because they're going to have such a mess on their hands. So if I were using a water system versus a wax system, or an ink system versus a wax system, which emulsion would you go with based on that?
I mean, honestly, any of those are going to work perfect with that system. It really just goes back to drying that screen properly. You know, get a dehumidifier in that room. You know, if a screen isn't fully dried, you're going to have potential problems throughout the entire process, regardless if you're using direct to screen.
Listen, I'm a huge advocate. I'm a huge advocate of drying cabinets.
Yes, absolutely.
Buy it or build your own. I don't care, but you need a heated drying cabinet in order to ensure that your emulsion is dry to the point where it's going to be most opportune to use. Based on that, does it matter? Would you think there's much of a difference between the wax and the ink system?
Yeah, I think there is a big difference between the two. Just like I was saying, I think that the ink systems are a little bit more susceptible to those environmental factors, and you have to be a little bit more controlled with your process and your system in your room if you're using those inkjet type systems that are out there. The wax seems to be a little bit more forgiving under those different conditions.
Okay. What are they doing with the laser system? I have to admit, I saw it at the show and I spent no time on it. They are putting an emulsion down, or they are not?
No, well, I mean, they're able to do a couple screens at a time now with the laser system.
Right.
But what I've seen with the laser systems, typically screens are being underexposed a little bit. It's tough to get a solid cure all the way through with that type of system. Same with the direct
What emulsion are they
LED.
using there?
What was that?
What emulsion are they using with that type of system?
Primarily, I've seen pure photopolymers used in that system, just because of the speed of the exposure.
How are you doing with your automatic coaters? That's a fairly new item for you, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So our automated, I mean, we've had a dual screen coder for a long time, and I have quite a few of those out there for the last couple of years, but that single screen coder, which is a little bit more economical, you should be able to get it into more of the small to medium sized shops because it's about half the price of that dual screen coder. But still, you're going to get the consistency, the same consistency as you would on the larger coder, just at a much better price point. Yeah, they're doing well. We've got a few of them out there right now. I just got done shooting a video that I'm going to put out probably later today. It's going to have a little bit more information on that coder, and it's actually, you can see it running. I coded a few screens during that video, so people can actually see it moving, coding screens, and then see the perfect coat that it gives. Obviously, you can hand code screens for 40 years and get really good at it, but you're only as good as muscle memory and your fatigue and everything that goes along with that. You've got screen room guys that, hey, they might come in hungover the next day. I guarantee those screens won't be the same as when they're 100%. But with an automated coder, anybody can go in there and learn to press a button, and every screen is going to be perfect and consistent. And if those screens are consistent as far as EOM, thickness, everything that goes along with that, you're going to have the exact same exposure, and you're going to have consistent, repeatable results.
Kevin, are you selling those direct, or are you selling those through distribution?
Both, primarily through distribution.
Okay. And who would be local to us in Southern California as far as distribution?
I mean, I'm not exactly sure who would be the best contact for you there. Marty, maybe you can chime in on that one.
Victor Kawa, D3 Industrial, Screen Printers Resource.
Okay, SPR. Okay.
Yeah, McLogan's.
Yeah, we do a lot with SPR. Okay.
Yeah, I don't work too much with the West Coast. I'm primarily the central states, so all of the distributors that fall within my region, I've got great knowledge about. But as far as outside my territory,
Okay.
I know some of the things that go on out there.
Okay. Thanks, Marty.
Sure thing. Yeah, Brian, if you'd like any information, our website has some details on the unit, but yeah, any email addresses, we could certainly forward you data sheets if you need them.
Okay.
You doing much,
Charlie.
Brian, are you doing much printing?
We're getting ready to. We're haven't disclosed it yet to anybody, but we're getting ready to start a brand utilizing the specialty inks, the glow and the reflective inks from Allura Glow. And then my significant other, she's got a brand that she's getting ready to start as well. So we really want to make sure that everything we're doing is high quality, and that is one area that we've had some issues with as far as consistency of the screen coating. So was looking into that. So that's why I'm on. In fact, why I wanted to come on today to get some pointers from Kevin and Marty there.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go. Ask away. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I know that everybody that's made screens have had problems from time to time. I guarantee your first screen that you coated and shot wasn't perfect. And I guarantee you made a mess, but everybody can kind of learn from the mistakes of others as we do these things. I've done a bunch of them over the past few months, just live Q&As where people jump on with all types of questions. And that's all uploaded on my Emulsion Guru YouTube channel as well. So
Okay.
there's a lot of content out there that I've been trying to put out as much as possible. I like doing the stuff with Charlie. Charlie and I were supposed to be doing a class out at ISS Atlantic City. I don't know if that's going to happen. It's still scheduled, but I'm guessing that's not going to take place either.
Well, even if they have Atlantic City, they are not going to have that class. M&R isn't going to be shipping a press out just for that. So my guess is the next time we get, or the first time we get to do it together, should be Long Beach.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Hopefully, yeah.
hopefully that comes off. Who knows? I mean, in today's world, I can remember when I got home, I was in Egypt doing a show, got home March 4th. And of course, looking at the schedule, and there's the DAX show that was coming up. There's Atlantic City that was coming up. There's FESPA coming up. And of course, like everyone else, I'm thinking, it's a month or so away. We'll be through this. Now we're at the point where we're 4 months into it, and it's kind of like, who the hell knows when we're going to be out of this thing? I mean, we're certainly trying to open up, and I do understand that, and I do agree with some of that, but at the same time, how do you impress on someone to not be stupid and just wear a damn mask? It isn't the worst thing in the world. You don't believe in it, that's fine. What about the people that will come in contact with? Especially those of us who are not exactly as young as we used to be. I mean, I got tested. I had to go to the hospital, so I got tested, and I'm fine. But then at the same time, I've been avoiding contact with people. Even when we have friends come over, we're on one side of the table, and they're on the other far side of the table, not in close proximity. It annoys me when people say, I don't want to wear a mask. It infringes on my rights. It's like, really? What about everybody else's rights? I mean, you wear a seatbelt, maybe you should cut out your seatbelt because, hey, it's infringing on your rights. There are some things that I understand and I have no problem with. There are other things that are like, really? Why? And all you got to do is look at what's going on in those states where they went ballistic, which is most of them. And it's spiking like crazy. And it's kind of like, the death toll is one thing. And I understand it. Just being sick. I mean, Brian, you know more about that than probably any of us on here. It's like, really, you really want to risk that? For what reason?
Yeah, no, the headaches and it was way worse than the flu. Way worse than the flu for me anyhow. And I've got pulmonary issues with the lungs. so I'm real susceptible to pneumonia. But anyhow, a couple questions, Kevin. We're primarily going to be doing water-based and discharge. Which of your, and not having ever used your emulsions, which would you recommend for us to use?
Yeah, so for water-based and discharge, I think CP Tex is king. It's a diazo-based emulsion, and it's bulletproof. The big thing is with water-based printing, you want to make sure that those screens are dry. Like I'd mentioned before, it's even more important for water-based and discharge printing to have a thoroughly dried screen, as well as have that screen exposed as much as possible. So,
Right.
there's an exposure latitude and exposure window. You want to be on the high side of that window when you're working with water-based and discharge.
Now, you don't have a version without the diazo, do you?
We do, our Chromatech WR. So what I was going to go with that one, it really goes back to the type of exposure unit that you have. Certain exposure units are going to work better with a pure photopolymer and might not work as well as with a dual cure or a diazo-based emulsion. LED systems tend to be outside of the range of dual cure and diazo-based emulsions. So that's where I would lean towards a pure photopolymer if you're using LED systems. But if you're using a single point metal halide, which honestly I think is still king and always will be, because I always think of quality when I'm thinking about a screen. I'm not thinking about speed or anything like that. I just want a quality, best screen possible, and that's a single point metal halide. With that, CP Tex, I've had customers do 75,000 impressions of the same set of screens with discharge all day long without any breakdown.
Okay.
And that's without screen hardeners too. I know there's a lot of people that have these crazy elaborate processes with screen hardeners and post-exposing and all these different things. But with CP Tex, if you're using a single point metal halide, it's bulletproof.
Okay, and that's the diazo one, correct?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Yeah, what we've been doing is the single component, and then post curing, or post exposing rather, when we're done, and that seems to be where we've been using the Ilano and the Murakami for a number of years. But I've always been looking at your stuff and wanted to support our fellow sponsors there. So
absolutely,
yeah.
I'd be happy to get some in your hands to play with.
Okay. Okay.
One thing I like to add, you'd mentioned post-exposing. There's a lot of people out there that do post-expose their screens, and really that's only working with pure photopolymer emulsions. It's really only continuing to harden that screen with pure photopolymers. With dual cures or diazo-based emulsions, all of that diazo has been washed away, so there isn't anything more to continue to cross-link during that exposure process. And there's a lot of people that post-expose with dual cure emulsions, and it makes them feel good, and it might be placebo effect and everything like that. I'm fine with it. If it makes them feel happy, they can continue to do it. But a pure photopolymer, it's actually going to continue to harden that screen with post-exposing. But keep in mind, that's only really a Band-Aid. You want to have that initial exposure process dialed in and proper to begin with. So if you're underexposing, it still is an underexposed screen, even if you're post-exposing.
Right.
You're never going to get that perfect, but it will continue to harden it. But it's just the kind of a Band-Aid in that process is in my theory, at least.
Okay.
Ryan, do you have a moisture meter?
No, we don't. We don't.
Jump on him, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think moisture meters are great to check to see the humidity and the moisture that's left in that screen. There's one that I use, I've got sitting right over here. I think they've discontinued this one, honestly, but the one by CFAR, it's got a flat surface. A lot of the moisture meters that are out there have these two sharp prongs because it's designed for checking the moisture of wood.
Yeah, familiar with those.
If you have something like that, what I typically would recommend is get a file and just file off those sharp tips on those. And you can get one of those from Lowe's or Home Depot or any of those types of construction places. But this one that was designed for screen printing, which is awesome. Unfortunately, I think that they discontinued it just because of lack of sales, which is unfortunate because I think everybody should have something like this in their screen room.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, you get your moisture level to 4% humidity or below.
Okay.
And that's going to be tough. You live in Los Angeles area, right?
Yeah, we're in Southern California. We're just north of the Ontario airport.
Yeah. Well, I've been there, not to your shop, but I've been to that area many times.
Yep.
And moisture meter is going to make or break your business because of all that moisture that you're experiencing in that area.
Okay.
You know, I mean, you know how damp it is in the mornings, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, we get real sporadic right now. We actually had a little bit of rain coming yesterday. It was crazy. So
I mean, you don't want to be limited to exposing your screens at 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day. You know,
right.
you're going to be able to expose throughout the day. So you're going to have some humidity controls in your plant.
Yeah, we have a dehumidifier in our little screen room is actually is heated and dehumidified, and we let those run and dry overnight before we actually attempt to expose.
Good for you.
Yeah, Brian, one thing I like to recommend as far as dehumidifiers go, most of them have that bucket that collects the water underneath it, but also has a little connection that you could hook up a hose and run that hose out of that room. If you have the ability to run that hose out of that room, it's better because most people forget that bucket is full. And now that bucket of water is sitting in your screen room just evaporating and putting the water right back.
Humidity. Yep.
And you're right back to square one all over again.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll just add that stencils can be quite deceiving when you just by touching them, they may feel dry. But I've gone in the shops and they said, well, we've had these coated for a week. They've got to be bone dry. But we'll take a meter to it and it's still 10% moisture, but to touch, it still feels dry. And then there are formulas that actually have an oil to them. And so they'll feel wet, but in actuality, they don't have any water in them at all. So a meter is the only way to truly know.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I always use the analogy. It's like a tomato. You can feel the outside of that tomato and it feels dry, but if you put your finger in the middle of that tomato, you know that it's wet on the inside. And that's a lot of times the same thing with screens if you're not working under perfect conditions. And with emulsion, if you have a perfectly dry screen in one environment and you bring it into a humid environment, it's going to suck all the moisture right back into that screen and re-wet it. So you're going to start right back to square one. A lot of people have the issues where they've got screens that they're drying and they're perfectly dry. And the next day they go and coat a bunch more screens and put it in that same rack. Now all of those screens, the water that's in those freshly coated screens is going right back into the air and it's re-wetting the screens that were dry from the day before. So it's just this vicious cycle back and forth, and then they're never fully dry.
Good point.
There's an old one.
Oh, that is old.
20 years.
Still works. That one he just showed, for instance, has it's a non-destructive meter. It has the two probes, but they're non-destructive. Yep. And if you'll notice, those are separate from the little black part that comes up, which means that those can be removed and replaced with sharp points or dull points. So if you're going to invest in a meter, a moisture meter, be sure and get the ones that have the removable probes so you can replace them with a flat probe. You know.
What brand was that, Marty?
This is Majestic.
Oh, Majestic. Okay.
Very old.
Actually, it's a TQM distributed by Majestic, but it's TQM, which is they're no longer being made.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you need to wind that one up, Marty? It seems like batteries were made. Yeah.
This looks like the first remote control I had when my dad bought a TV, 40 years ago.
It looks like an old cell phone. Yeah. A really old cell phone.
The brick. Yep.
Oh, I remember those.
Yep. All too well.
I think I have a collection of cell phones down in my basement. The only thing I'm missing is the one that I got my daughter. The first one was one of those huge Motorola's, which she hated. I said, it's just for you to keep in your car in case you run into a problem. And it was so damn big and heavy that you couldn't really walk around with it, which was perfect.
Was that the one that you had a big box that had, you know, everything. And then you had a cable running to the earpiece.
Well, they had the bad kind. I never went that way, but no, this was
That was
the
the first one.
Motorola. It was probably, I don't know.
That was the brick. That was what
Yeah,
we called the
pounds.
brick.
It was a total brick. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, God help you if you really needed to have it in your hand and go somewhere, your arm would fall off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sue, you're being awful quiet. You don't have any questions at all?
You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah.
Just here to listen.
Okay.
How's it down? You're down in Texas, aren't you?
Pardon?
You're down in Texas.
Yes.
How's things for you down there?
We are spiking so bad that people are starting to go into panic mode again, which I think might be a good thing.
I agree with that. I mean, but how are you doing factory-wise? You open?
And we're very slow, but we're open and we're doing what we can do.
What town are you in?
Dallas Fort Worth area.
Well, I'm from Dallas originally. Well, I wasn't born there, but that's where from 6 months old, that's where I live.
Yeah, so being from Dallas, you understand the humidity problems that we're talking about, right?
Oh my goodness, today is horrific.
Pretty humid. Not like Houston.
No, not like Houston. I grew up in the Midwest right along the Mississippi River, so humidity's been part of my life since forever.
You, Sue, what kind of shop do you have?
A small box shop, basically. We're in a building unit thing, just a shed unit thing.
Right, manual shop?
Yes, manual. We have a 4-color chameleon, 8-color chameleon, I'm sorry.
8 colors, good. What are you using currently for emulsion?
We use the Chromatech and we just got the Chromaline.
Excellent. Yeah, the Chromaline is designed to fight those humid conditions. So when it dries, I mean, we've tested that under humidity chambers, which it was almost wet in that humidity chamber. And a lot of times when it's humid, the film sticks to those screens when you're trying to expose it because it's the humid, basically the moisture that's left in the screen or left in that film just laminate to each other. But with that Chromaline, you won't have that issue. It's designed for humid conditions.
So I will never have a film stick to a screen, huh?
Didn't, no. Well, if the screen is completely wet yet, yeah, it'll stick to your screen. But if it's dry, yeah, you won't have those issues.
Yeah, the reason that you're film positive or the ink toner on it is going to stick to that screen is that screen still has moisture. So you should, if it's sticking, then you do have a humidity
It
problem.
doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, and when it does, we know what the cause is. So it's
Forget the baby powder, get rid of the humidity.
film sticking to the screen.
Yep, the baby powder is that's a
Big
band
Band-Aid.
that people have used in the process for many years, and just put a little on the film. It won't stick. But if you have your screen room under perfect conditions, well, not perfect even, but get that humidity down, obviously that's the best case scenario. But the lime will definitely help those issues too.
Kevin, you're young, but when I was a kid, and we were doing 8-foot by 10-foot screens. We were in the graphics business, but we actually had the same problem in Dallas, and we would rub cornstarch on every screen with our hands so that our film wouldn't stick. So we didn't have Johnson's baby powder back then. You know?
Yeah, but it worked, right?
Yeah.
We used to use cornstarch to register our screens back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Black shirt down and powder it, and then you can register all your screens to it because we were using textiles at the time. And the last thing you want to do is print something and then have to scrub out a screen.
Yeah.
So kept all, those socks where you always lost one. Well, always brought the next one back to the factory, filled it with Argo starch and powdered it down and did your registration that way.
Yep.
I remember my first deal So when I first started in '76, I hired, I think it was either 5 or 7 guys, including a production manager. And I hadn't even seen a screen other than when I was in college, which I refused to do, was that stupid thing called silk screening. But when it came to coating a screen, my God, you have to understand, we were in, shall we say, the part of Brooklyn that you don't want to go to, especially at night. In any event, I'm watching my guy, my foreman coating the screen, and what he's doing is we were using bichromate emulsions, which, to be honest with you, I loved. Sorry, they don't have anything that's even comparable today, but you have to mix it and use it inside of an hour, otherwise it would go off on you. So he'd mix it up, put a screen down with the side touching the garment facing up, pour some out on the corner, and then take a piece of Venetian blind, metal Venetian blind that had a strip of wood attached to the top, and he would coat to one side, coat back to the other side, and then remove the excess emulsion. And I'm thinking, what the hell happens if we run out of Venetian blinds? We can't screen print anymore. Needless to say, I found out later on that there are things called scoop coaters, and he was my production manager for about 6 months. Every time I asked him to teach me something, it was like, oh, you can't do this, it's too hard. Got rid of him, and I found out, you know what? It wasn't that hard to put it together. But of course, with bichromate emulsions, you had a lot of latitude. Depending on how much you exposed and how much you wanted to wash, determined what you were going to get as a finished product.
Yep.
That was back in your day, Bill.
Yeah, well, I started before you did. We
I'm
go
sure
back.
you did.
We go back to the days when
You're much older than I am and look older too.
Hey! I still have my hair.
I gave that up a long time ago.
I know. We didn't have scoop coaters. We didn't have scoop coaters. In the 1940s, they didn't exist.
I mean, what more do you need?
Well, we would take a sheet of glass and lay it down, then lay the screen on that sheet of glass, and then we would pour the emulsion into the screen. The screen edges would stop it if we want to go all the way. If we didn't, we'd want to put yardsticks in there to block it. But we could make stencils. We printed high densities back then, high density inks, using enamel inks. It was you'd throw the screen away when you got through. But we were trying to print model aircraft gaskets, and they had to be an 1/8 of an inch thick, and you couldn't do that with regular ink. So we had to build a very thick stencil, and then we had to add Argo cornstarch to our inks to thicken them up. But it worked. We were able to take gasket material, with cork and binder, and actually make an ink out of it,
When I started, we didn't have a dryer, so we used what they called denim ink, which was for denim.
Yeah.
If a gallon fell on you, the next place that you found yourself was in the hospital.
Right.
A gallon of ink must have weighed 18 pounds. I mean, the shirts were great. After you printed the white and you let it dry, you could take it and crack it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing stuff. Found out, about 6 months into it, we finally got into plastisol inks because we built our own dryers and stuff at the time. But those initial ones were with denim ink. Miserable.
Well, you had plastisol from the day you started, though.
Well, they had plastisol. Don't forget, I got into this not knowing the first thing about screen printing. On top of which, didn't know what plastisol was. The shops that we worked with used textiles. You put the very first shirt that I designed and they printed with textiles. It was for a black shirt. Never survived the first wash. All you saw was stains on the shirt. Fortunately, we were printing rock and roll, and so whoever bought those shirts never got to wear them a second time. But
Hey, it was a retro look.
Bootleg is bootleg, and you never worried about that.
It was retro distressed. You just didn't know.
We never had returns. We never had an unhappy client. We never had our clients, but that was okay. Different time.
So Kevin, what's coming up next with Chromaline? What have you got in the pipeline?
I'll probably get in trouble for mentioning it, but We're working on a new water-resistant pure photopolymer. It's looking very promising.
Good solids?
Even more water-resistant than our current Chromatech WR. It's looking pretty good.
Good solids content?
Yep, high in solids.
What do you
Water-based
call
is
high?
definitely the thing right now. Water-based is in, and water-based is going to remain for a long
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's not going
may as
anywhere.
well be addressing that more so than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're only going to be melting plastic on shirts for so long, and that's what plastisol is. And but keep in mind, everything that in our industry is cyclical too. I mean, water-based and discharge was big years ago, and then it went away, and now it's coming back. Who knows what it's going to be in 15 years again? But the fashion industry is definitely cyclical.
I've probably watched discharge come and go a half a dozen times over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But right now, it's definitely the hot thing, water-based and discharge. And a lot of people, the reason why they go that route is because they think it's green. They think it's far more environmentally friendly, which we know it's
You have
definitely,
resin.
there's stuff in there too.
You have resin. As soon as you have resin, unless you have a filtration system, what you're doing is nothing more environmentally friendly than plastisol.
Yeah.
Right.
So with this new product, our lab is learning a lot more about having a stencil that cures a lot better under the LED exposure systems, which has a shifted wavelength. And so what we've learned from this new product that we're field testing right now is we can apply this chemistry to other products in our lineup and boost their cure rates and cure through without really affecting the other properties, the coating, the EOMs, the cure rates, but allow them to be more universal for the addition of these new LED units that are coming on the scene.
You think that it's money well spent chasing the LED market versus the high-end units?
I do.
You think we're still going to be in this DIY mode forever?
I mean, they're not only DIY. LED seems to be the hot topic in this industry, and every equipment manufacturer is making them, but they're not making them with emulsion manufacturers in mind. They're not consulting with that. They're just putting them out there. And there's a vast difference between those LED systems that are on the market. That's one of the things that's a struggle for the consumer is they get this LED system, but it might not work the same as one of the other LED systems that are out there.
Yeah, not all LEDs are high in UVA.
Right, exactly. And they're not all the same wavelength. And you know as well as I do that emulsion needs to be within the proper wavelength to fully cure that screen and fully burn it and expose it. So that's one of the struggles with LED, but it's not going to go anywhere because once again, there are benefits to LED. They run a lot cooler. You don't have to change the bulbs consistently every year. It's less energy consumption, but as far as quality goes, it's still a multi-point light source. You're still not going to get a quality stencil like you would with a single point metal halide.
Yeah.
I'm not big on low quality at all.
Well,
I'm going to fight it as long as I live. For me personally, I'm going to fight for higher quality.
Absolutely.
And,
yep.
and,
And
LED,
that's what it should be.
And LED has no place in the screen printing industry as an exposure unit. That's my personal belief. No more so than wood frames have a life anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, if we all get together and say, let's push out this low quality crap and start making better products, I think we'll go a lot further,
Yeah.
But if we're going to continue to chase that low end market and make products, like you say, for LED, I think we're going backwards. It's not a good move.
The thing is when you have someone new coming in and they have a certain budget and and their electrical supply is not where you'd like it to be. If they don't have 220 line, they're not going with metal halide. They're going to be going with LED, period. It plugs right in the wall, no matter
But is that your problem?
Huh?
Is that your problem?
It's definitely a problem when you're dealing with small shops first opening up. they don't have the 220 electric supply available to them. And so they're going to go with something that they can just plug in a wall, which puts it right into LED. It's either that or they're going fluorescent, which is even a worse decision to make.
Right. Well,
And
some
so-
of the LED systems that are out there are just as good as fluorescent tube systems as far as the quality standpoint.
Probably so, but they're faster and they don't have to worry about changing bulbs.
True.
And so to that end, they're going to go that way.
True.
You know, listen, metal halide to me was always the way to go. But in today's world, when you're talking to someone who's first coming in and you mention metal halide, and oh yeah, and the bulbs are $350 to $550, and you should be changing them about once a
6
year.
months. Yeah.
Versus an LED system where theoretically it's good for 50,000 to 100,000 hours.
Right.
I always found absurd because I don't think they've been on the market for 100,000 hours, but nevertheless,
Let's estimate.
you know,
Yeah.
it's difficult. It's difficult to take someone who's new and really doesn't understand. And even if you explain it to them, that it's still a better way to go, but it's going to cost you more, but you're going to get better results. On day one, they're thrilled just to get a screen where they can actually see the image on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's, and I know because Bill is in a lot of the groups as well on Facebook, that you see so many of the beginners out there that are trying to do this on a shoestring budget. And again, want to know how can I make an exposure unit? I see that more and more. And they're all looking toward, you know, the economical LED. And again, as Bill just alluded to, most of them are not putting out UVA. And so it makes it tough for Kevin's company to produce an emulsion that's actually going to expose.
But hey, all that's good for you, Brian.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that, you know, like 50% of all businesses in the United States go out of business within 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's even worse in the screen printing industry. That's all businesses. When you just, Kevin, you call on clients all the time, and I'm sure that you see clients that start up a business, 6 weeks later, they're gone, you know?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
as
There's a
long-
vast variety that are out there. And some are gone, and then some, you know, could start in a garage with a little manual printer, and they're, you know, they've got 6 autos 5 to 6 years later. There's a vast variety, but it all matters how you run your business. And you're right. What you invest into that business is what you're going to get out of that business by far.
But I think every screen printer would tell you the same thing I'm going to tell you, is that, you know, if distributors and manufacturers and distributors started really being considerate of the screen printer and wanting him to do the very best to stay in business long term and be like Brian all these years down the road, and he's on top of it, okay? But we're not giving him the opportunity to reach Brian's status if we're going to continue to sell him inexpensive products that don't work well.
Yep. No, I see it so much, you know, especially the presses, you know, these kids, and that's why I push them to, hey, go buy a good quality used unit versus this Chinese garbage or the eBay garbage or whatever, you know, because we all tried that at some point in time in our life, and they're garbage. They're frustrating in that. And so, yeah, I see so many of them out there that are wanting to start, but again, no budget. So we go as cheap as possible, and then they're trying to figure out what they're doing after the fact.
Yeah.
It's
When I hear
expensive.
people using Holden's ink, Holden's emulsion or Speedball emulsion,
Oh,
I'm sickened.
God.
yeah.
I'm sickened by that, you know?
Yeah. No, we see it in the ink industry so much. You know, the Speedball stuff, again, everybody wanting to know why they're having issues. Well, look at the brand you're using.
Yeah.
You know what's funny with Speedball? Do you know that they had in their kits, they had diazo emulsion, not diazo, they had bichromate emulsion in
Yep.
the kits well beyond when we as professionals were not allowed to use it.
Use it. Yeah.
Oh, you're an amateur. Yes, you can use it, but the professionals couldn't. And
Yeah.
Here, use this carbon arc lamp. Go ahead, use this carbon arc lamp.
well, the thing you have to keep in mind with that emulsion, I mean, it went off when you used matches.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of a perfect situation.
Marty,
I
Kevin,
didn't buy a bunch of it
who
because
makes
I love
speedball
this
emulsion?
What was that, Bill?
Who's making speedballs emulsion?
Don't know.
Charlie, you don't know either. You know, they're obviously not making that emulsion.
No, they don't make their own stuff.
I
No.
need to speak to Andy up in Canada because he's involved with speedball.
Right.
But
But somebody's making that
he's
emulsion.
he's dealing with poster inks and stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's got to be one of the major emulsion companies making it and private labeling it to Holden and I guess Holden doesn't
If I
make
were
their
going
own.
to put my money down, I would probably go with Ulano or
Yeah.
Duo.
I wouldn't be surprised if it came over on a boat.
Huh?
I would. That's what I was going to say, Marty. Is that it's Chinese produced or
And that
Vietnamese
could very well
produced.
be. You're
It
right.
could be.
May have started out as domestically made, but I'm sure to save a few pennies, they probably found another source.
Yep. No, I know of a couple factories that produce specialty stuff over there for the screen printing industry, and absolute garbage. But I'm sure that's where they're going for it because it's with their kits being so inexpensive, trying to get it out to the masses and that. But it's absolute garbage.
Yeah, but if you're just doing this as a hobby, you'll get by.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
I was consulting for a couple of months over in China. I'm not going to mention the name of the company, but a very large American-owned company who has plants in Japan and China, multiple plants, and they're a graphics. We'll leave it at that. They do graphics printing, not posters, but graphics printing. And when I got over there, they were using everything they had was Chinese made. They were trying to buy locally. And their emulsion was clear, transparent. It had no color at all, not even a light tinge of brown to it.
Wow.
It was like,
The first emulsion I ever got was from a company in New York called Standard Screen.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever used it, but it was a total clear. And I'm thinking, how the hell does this stuff work?
Yeah.
And never could figure it out. I don't know if Standard Screen is still around or not, but
I don't either, but I remember them.
Arthur was the owner of it. And I mean, I bought my first carousel, used it for one job and it never used it again because we printed on tables. And the reality was couldn't go fast enough on a carousel to do the things we needed done. But Standard Screen had all of those things. And I remember years later, I was chatting with somebody from the company and said, where can I buy some of those stoppers for table printing? I said, we still have a handful. We'll just send them to you. So I have them down in my basement. But I loved print tables. I mean, when I go overseas, I think I love the way they work. And nowadays with the automatic flashes that can follow you, it's a whole different deal. When I did it, it was on vinyl tabletops. Now they're predominantly glass, although the ones I worked with in Istanbul were made of granite.
Mm-hmm.
And you couldn't hurt these things no matter what you did. I just was always amazed, like, what the hell is it costing to do a 50-foot long, 60-inch wide slab of granite? They claimed it was inexpensive.
Over there it is, yeah.
The first time I went to Turkey, I went to a town called Izmir, which is the third largest city. And the guy had built his screen room out of white marble. I thought I was going to kill myself, man. Marble, when it gets wet, is not the stuff to stand on. And I'm thinking, how the hell do you afford to build the entire room out of white marble?
Mm-hmm. It's real cheap over there. Yep.
Not Bargoff. I don't know why I said Bargoff. Shree, who is in Pondicherry, has a 5-story building, completely marble. Big automatic shop, 20 automatic.
in Turkey, marble and granite are just not very expensive compared to other things. But I mean, white marble, I even have photos of it somewhere. I had to dig them out. It was amazing, but we had to put stuff on the floor. Otherwise we were going to die out there.
Slipping and sliding.
So Kevin, what's your fastest exposing emulsion, and what are you looking at with a 5,000 or 10,000 watt unit? Metal halide.
I mean, honestly, most of the pure photopolymers are all in that same range, and it really matters how you coat your screen and everything, how thick you coat your screen. But you know, some of our faster exposing emulsions are like our DTS Universal, which is designed for graphics printing. That's probably our fastest exposing emulsion that we have.
Direct screen. And so what are you looking at with a let's say a 40 micron stencil thickness?
I mean, that's a question that barely can be answered.
Loaded. It's loaded, but I'm trying to get an average.
Yeah, I mean, it could range. I've seen exposure times with, say, even like Chroma Blue at 4 seconds with some of the LED systems that are out there too. Okay. You know, I've seen 4-second exposure times. That's way too fast in my opinion. 1 second is a 25% difference. So, you know.
Yeah, if you're off just a little bit, it's major.
I had that working with Chroma Blue up in North Dakota. We were down to 5 seconds, and it's like I called Vastex, it happened to be their unit. I said, "This is weird because I've used your unit before." And I said, "I'm at 5 seconds." They said, "Man, that's way too fast." I said, "I know, but at 4 I'm washing out, and at 6 I'm overexposing."
Right.
And to this day, they're still at 5 seconds.
Yep. And that's one of the problems that I'll talk about LED all day long. You know, I think that is one of the issues with LED. It's just not a very forgiving system. You know, metal halide, you actually have a window of exposure latitude that you can fall within. It's just a little bit friendlier for, you know, people that are just getting into the business. And a lot of these people just getting into the business go with an LED system because that's what they see on a message board somewhere, and they think that's the direction they should go. But when they get it into their shop, they realize it's just not as friendly of a system.
Yeah. When I tell a lot of the people in my seminars and workshops, because LED is so popular now, way to go is buy yourself a good used metal halide lamp. They're on the market cheap as hell because everybody thinks that they should be going over to LED.
Yep.
But you still got to have 220 power coming in. Anyway, fun industry.
Dude, what do you have for an exposure unit?
We have metal halide.
Metal halide. Good for you.
I wouldn't go any other way. And my big selling point we started out cheap. Man, the first screen you shoot on that metal halide, now anybody that asks, I say just shoot on yours and then come use mine and you'll never use yours again.
Yeah.
It's
big difference.
Night and day, there's no difference. I mean, they're uncomparable.
Yeah.
And the dots that you can hold in comparison to the LED, I think is also that's just my opinion. I think it's uncomparable.
Yeah, I think everybody in this room is in agreement with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, you've got people that go out there and get a halogen bulb from Home Depot, and halogen doesn't put out barely any UV whatsoever.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make these units from, you know, the biggest problem with a lot of the message boards that are out there, there's a lot of misinformation, and people see somebody that they did it and they got it to work. And yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff and get it to work in this industry, but is it really recommended? Are you pulling your hair out trying to, you know, make this thing work? You can make a lot of things work, but is it recommended? Probably not.
No.
And there's a lot of misinformation out there about how to build exposure units and all this stuff. And I really wish those people would not make videos.
Everybody that starts out lives on YouTube, and I look at YouTube and it's like, man, if you don't know who it is that's posting that, don't even view it, because everybody loves seeing their face on a monitor for whatever reason. And the reality is more bad information is put out there than good information.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I'm
Sure.
kind of leery of anybody who's, not using their real name. You know, when you got, when you name, when you name your YouTube show, when you name your YouTube show Cat Spit, I'm sorry, dude, but that has nothing to do with green birding.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty bad videos from him. Yep.
Yeah. One of the biggest problem is that people don't think. Everybody in this room, I can tell, we're all thinkers, okay? But that's the problem with the world, is that people don't think. They jump on social media and they ask a stupid question because they didn't think of what they want to say. And then, they end up with, 50 different answers and they're all incorrect,
Right.
And then when somebody does come along, and tries to tell the correct answer, then all these stupid people don't want to look stupid and they're going to fight with you. It's a wild, wild west out there,
Yeah.
The bottom line is, it should be not that the screen was exposed and washed out, that the printed areas washed out, okay? The real purpose is resilience and resistance, and resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't have a resolution, you might as well not use the screen. If you don't have resistance, you might as well not put it on the press because you're going to break down, So you have to have those two things. And I don't think you're going to get those with low-end equipment.
One of the things I came to terms with a long time ago, I don't post online for the most part, only because I don't want to get into pissing matches with somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. And you end up wasting more time and more effort trying to put your own view across. So what I do is I'll send someone a message that if you're interested, call me or text me, but I am not going into long dissertations online. Sorry.
Yeah,
My
that's smart.
other feeling was, if you've got so much time on your hand, if you're a printer, you got so much time on your hand that you're on the internet all the time, how good a printer can you be? Because you don't have any damn business. If you had business, you wouldn't be on the internet.
Jeff Proctor and I got into this. We were talking at a trade show about, this back at AOL days, American Online, AOL forum that we, you were over there, Charlie. And so
Listen,
we were talking.
My email is still AOL.
Yeah, but I think Nancy's still at AOL too. But Nancy Gray. But we were talking about it, and Proctor said, "Bill, come on. You got to, if you're on social media, and you're reading this stuff, those people are not successful. If they had business, if they were printing, they wouldn't be on social media. So all you're going to see is a bunch of losers, people who have more time than they've got enough money that they don't have to work. But I'm on there as a learning experience. As you know, I'm a writer. Most of my work, especially since February the 20th, when I went into isolation. I mean, I write on average an article every day for the last 35, 40 years, okay? I've got tens of thousands of articles, all on screen printing. And I go on there to find out what people's problems are. And then I solve them with an article. I don't mention the person I got it from. I'm not going to embarrass them. But, you read, you just go on there. I guarantee you, I can go on Facebook, and within a minute, I have something that I can write about. And I use that. Now, I will take a synopsis of my article that I wrote, and by the end of the day, I'll post a response to give this guy the information that in an article that I'm going to sell. Right now, I'm selling for $1. But I'm going to help the guy that asked the question, because that's just my nature, to help people, and yours is too, Charlie. I know you're a consultant. Your whole goal in life is to help people give more than you're asking for. If you get $1,000 from somebody, I guarantee you're giving them $5,000, $10,000 worth of information. That's what I do too.
Wow.
But social media has its place. for me.
I think it's certainly certainly something that we're all involved with, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And if you know what you're looking for, you can get some good information. It's when you don't know anything that you end up with a lot of really bad information. That's one of the things I stress in my class. Don't watch YouTube unless you know who it is that's putting on the presentation. If you don't know the person, don't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
How
think
about
social media is a necessary evil nowadays.
It is.
And, you know, you mentioned the people that just are doing it because of, you know, fame, or they want to see their face on the screen. I hate seeing my face on a screen, but you want to know what? During quarantine, it was one way that I could get information out to customers that I knew was good information. So that's why I started my YouTube channel, is because I know the stuff that I'm putting out there has a specific task in mind. It's one, you know, one specific topic for each one of those categories. And you know, it's all factual information, whereas you could go and anybody can put them out there, and there are some really bad ones out there, that is for sure.
Right.
But it's a necessary evil these days.
It is.
Charlie, in the last year or so, can you say that you spent more time advising customers in a certain area of screen printing? Do you see a trend where your help is needed more?
Okay, so I've been doing consulting for a little over 40 years now. Number one area of disaster, screen room.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
it is, you know, it's called screen printing, and yet people don't know how to make a screen. They just don't. They are looking for every shortcut in the world.
Yep.
They don't want to. You know, I was obviously with Bill. I was a huge Newman roller frame fan. Well, the reason that there are so many on the market is because people buy them and don't want to actually do the maintenance work.
Right. They don't want to work.
And it's kind of like, well, don't buy them, because hell, for $18 you can buy a pre-stretched screen that's probably going to be as good, if not better, than what you've got in the way of a roller frame that you haven't maintained.
And it's going to last you about 6 weeks.
It'll last you for, listen, I've gone into shops where I can't believe how long people are trying to use something that's like old underwear. But making a proper screen, I mean, I have to admit, I have now moved over to the Sherlock Easy frame, only because it doesn't require the maintenance. It's a high stretch, high tension, and it's a quick and easy turnover. And I think that's one of the unfortunate things about roller frames. Unless you work with them a lot, you don't know how to stretch them up quickly.
Right.
And people don't go about doing it the way they should. But definitely the screen room, to me, is the number one area that when I go into a shop, I always do my walkthrough and stuff. And of course, the things that I look for, I want to see the bottom of a screen. When I see it, when I see the image reconstructed with tape, I know there's a major problem there. And is that the reality? And yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You know, clear packaging tape. I mean, these companies are buying them by the skid, because before they even have a problem, they tape out the whole bottom of the screen. Well, you know, my first question is, why are you doing that? It's precautionary. Well, it's precautionary because you're not doing it correctly. And so to me, that is one of the areas that I focus on very heavily, is the screen room. Everybody's saying, yeah, but what about production? It's like, production is the easiest part of the whole thing. It's moving a squeegee over a screen. Big deal. Oh, I got a great, you know, I love the term, I got a great production person. It's like, oh yeah, that means you got somebody who knows how to correct all the shit that you've already done prior to them getting the damn screens. You know, the screen room to me is it. You know, you get that right, and 75% of the problems are going to go away. Still going to have other issues to deal with, but to me, that makes up 75% of the problem.
I have a poster, a screen process model, you know, similar to the one from the SGIA from the old days, but there's mine has 620 variables listed, and this is across all segments of screen printing, whether it's industrial, functional, textile, whatever. But basically it all comes down to screen printing, regardless of what you're screen printing. And 620 known variables, and then there are sub variables that are not included in that, because you're going to have sub variables and sub variables. But 620 variables, 304 are related to screen making. To give you an idea about how important screen making is. And the two biggest things in screen making are tension and emulsion coating. If you can learn it, granted you have to have good product, but you can't use Holden's or Speedball. But if you have a good product and you learn how to coat that screen properly, and you'll have pretty good results if you have tension as well, But tension and screen coating are the two most important parts of the process. And how long does it take somebody to learn just two things? And if everybody would just concentrate on that instead of production and squeegee sharpening and stuff, just concentrate on getting a good emulsion and learning how to coat it properly and dry it, and expose it, your problems go away, just like Charlie said.
Yeah, it's definitely the most important part of the process. And in screen printing, you lose a little bit of quality each step of the way. So if you don't start with good film, you're never going to have a good screen. If you don't have a good screen, you're never going to have a good print. You lose a little bit along the way. So start with.
You're not going to get a very good revenue. And you won't be able to buy the products that are good because you're not making any money.
I think
Sue's over there. Sue's going to agree with me there. I can see her nodding her head.
I see too many people wanting the quick fix instead of figuring out how to correct it permanently.
Yeah.
The quick fix to get through it. Stop down, fix it permanently, and you won't have that issue again.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to experiment to figure out how to do it correctly. If it doesn't work, try something else until you get it correct, so you can repeat that correct process over and over.
Similar to what Sue's saying, I think of screen printing as a career, okay, as a relationship, okay, as a marriage, okay, and there are no relationships that are going to start out well if you go with a low-cost model, okay. It's not going to happen.
Well,
you want to marry the best woman that you can get, or a man in Sue's case, or maybe not. I don't know, Sue. Okay. But
Not that I'm judging anybody else.
no, I'm not either. But yeah, you gotta have all the right ingredients to make anything work, whether it's relationship or screen printing, and I think not just the ingredients, but the processes have to be in line, Keith, Kevin, I look at your name and I see this KK thing and I'm thinking, Keith, it just jumps out. Every time I see your name, I'm thinking his name is Keith. No, his name is Kevin. Kevin, what do you see as your biggest number one problem in educating people about your products and the use of your products? Where's the number one problem?
I think underexposure is the number one thing when you look at a screen room. I would say probably 95% of the shops in the US are underexposing their screens.
Mm-hmm.
You can always bump it up about 10% because they're afraid that they're going to overexpose it. They're afraid that they're not going to get the details that they're after. But really, a properly exposed screen doesn't really have to do with the film end. After you have the proper exposure time nailed down, that's when you have to manipulate your art the proper way, fingerprint your presses and all that stuff.
Right.
But most people are underexposing their screens. It just is, it's pretty rampant.
Yeah.
So nobody uses an exposure calculator?
Yeah, some don't. Some, as you can see on, like we were saying, those Facebook groups, people, they'll, just like Bill said before too, what's the exposure time for this? Well, there's no way anybody can give you an exposure time by just telling you something. Yep, right there, exposure calculator.
Everybody situation is different. If you're in the next room next to me, your situation is going to be slightly different than mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it
Kevin,
makes me nobody has to do their homework.
Yep.
Kevin, I have a question for you. Okay. This, when I bought this, well, actually I didn't buy it. Okay. It was given to me, but
You owe us money.
I lost money. No, so you lost money. So I have a question though. This neutral density filter
Yes.
was taped onto this film positive on the back side. Okay.
Okay.
Why?
Did you get that recently?
No, that's
this is,
that's one of the old
you know, it's got to be, I don't know, years, decades, a decade or more. It's a long time ago. I'm thinking it's just one, I think it's an error. Okay.
It is.
It probably wasn't error. It was on the wrong side. Obviously
Yours is on the top?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why this one's on the bottom. You know? But they're shipped out that way, right?
I mean that one is from quite a while ago.
I mean, they're shipped out already taped together.
Yes, they're already taped on the right side.
I've had this so long that I'm writing an article right now on exposure calculator, and I have a Chromaline, I have a Kiwo, and I have a several of them. You know, I have a whole stack of them here. There's all
Yep.
there, and that was the only one that was wrong. That neutral density filter was on the bottom, and I went, "What the hell?" And I went, "Bill, did you tape that on there 20 years ago or not?" I don't know. And I'm thinking,
I've seen it before.
I don't remember taping it.
It's these tiny little pieces of tape that are on there. It's very easily that it could have fallen off and just got taped on the wrong side. But yeah, it should be on the top. The
Don't
full
worry,
thing.
they fired the guy who gave you that one.
Well,
Like I
he's
said,
probably dead by now.
yeah, that one was a long time ago. We have either this exposure calculator or we've got the little small Stouffer scales.
Stop
It's
it.
just the first, it's just the first 10 steps.
Never loved working with the Stouffer scales. I don't know. When I did darkroom work, film work, I used that all the time. But for screen making, I'm still a fan of the neutral density filters and the image area.
Yes, same here. The thing that I like about the little Stouffer scale is I use it as kind of a quality control tool.
At the
So
edge.
I'll put this on the outside of a screen maybe once a week just to make sure that nothing has changed in my process.
You're
When
holding
I'm-
on
I
that?
tape the stopper scale to my glass, so it's
Yep.
on every screen in exactly the same place.
Yep.
But using that's with exposure. But I have a question. Let's just talk about the stopper scale because I don't want to talk about your Chromaline exposure calculator right now. It's a stopper scale. If you've got a stopper scale and it's on top of the emulsion, right?
Yep.
Okay. And you're getting a step 7. Okay. Now I'm not looking for you to repeat something you've heard. I'm looking for your knowledge, your thinking process. Is that how do you assure that the bottom of that stencil is fully cured? The other side from the light with using a stopper scale.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's not perfectly accurate. That's why I wouldn't use this for figuring out your exposure times.
Okay, then let's
That's why
go
I
back.
always do something
Let's
like
go back to this one. Okay, how is this any different?
It's going to put it in a ballpark.
Ballpark,
Honestly,
exactly.
the best way to find your exposure time is doing a step test.
Yeah.
That's factoring in your particular film and your particular process. This is going to give you a ballpark number. It's going to give you in that range. And we build in exposure latitude into all of our emulsions. So it's going to get you close, but it's not perfect.
Right.
You could continue to do this and dial in you could do this and have each one of those steps be very far apart from each other. And then after you figure out what that is, you can do this again at a much smaller increment. and find out which one's better. So you,
You
can
can be
always
very
find
exact. Yeah. You can be very exact, but you can only be exact on one stencil.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
One stencil. So how can you call it an exposure calculator? Why do we, not you, but why do we call it a calculator? Okay. We're using the word calculator. We assume using a calculator, we put in 2 + 2 = 4. Okay. Every time we see that 2 + 2, the answer is 4. We know that. That's what a calculator does. This is not a calculator, but we use the term calculator and it's incorrect. It's only going to give you that one screen. The next screen, entirely different.
I agree with that. I think you just sold me some automated coders with that. You know, honestly,
Yeah.
if you're using an automated coder and you've got your process nailed down and very consistent, you know, or somebody that's using capillary film is extremely consistent, something along those lines. But yeah, if you've got somebody that is coding their screens all over the place and you have all different EOMs, yeah, it's obvious that you wouldn't be able to say this is the exposure time for all of those, but there's a root cause that needs to be addressed before,
Right.
you know, and that's obviously a exposure calculator is not going to fix that. They have to address some of those coding issues before, but
By buying an automatic
build
coder.
in exposure. Yeah, well, that's why we build in exposure latitude as well, because you want to have something that's more forgiving. You know,
Yeah.
there needs to be some give. And as these people use LED systems with pure photopolymers, and we're talking about 5-second exposure times, obviously they're not as forgiving. So if
Right.
somebody's coding each one of their screens a little bit different, they're going to
They
have
are.
bigger problems.
They are.
I don't, my favorite thing when I go into a shop is when I ask them what their exposure time is, and they'll give me a time, and I say, well, for what mesh count? Oh, for everything.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
For everything? And it's like, thank you. I now know I will be able to make my fee justified.
Right. It's only going to take 5 minutes.
So often that it's frightening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Half of my screens are yellow, half of my screens are white. It's all the same exposure time. No, that's not the case.
It's
No.
like
I see it all the time too.
this much, and you're going through this much. How could it take the same amount of time?
Yeah.
Yep. Every screen build has its own exposure time.
Right. Yeah.
Oh well.
Hey, Bill, can I see that calculator again? Do you have?
Yours, Chromaline?
Yeah.
Let me get a white background for you.
And
Remote
where is the neutral density filter on that?
It's on the back.
Right. So would you not want to have it right reading to the emulsion side?
Here, right there.
So the side that you're showing us would be against the emulsion, correct?
Right.
No, this side right here, this side is going to, is my camera reversing it for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's reversed on the monitor. No, the way I'm holding this, it's right reading right now for me, right here in this room. Okay, I don't know what it's like.
Yep.
But
Same.
it's right reading and the film is back here on the back.
Right.
Which
So
is
that
where
would
it
be
should be.
correct.
That's correct.
Because
So
we want
when
to
you look
filter
at
the light before it reaches the image, before it gets to the stencil. Because if
Right.
you put a film in between your image film and the stencil, you're going to create a gap.
Right. But yeah, well, putting it back here, okay, is creating a gap, which means that all of these little fine scales on here are being lifted up off of the emulsion.
That would be wrong reading.
Wrong. Yeah, you're reading it wrong.
Yeah, Bill, when you look at the film itself, if you look at the film itself, obviously there's the printed side, which
Right.
has the, like emulsion to emulsion. So the printed side, the flat side, should go against the screen, and the filter should be on the outside of that.
Outside of it.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So light goes through the
so-
filter, through the film, through the emulsion.
Okay. So that was what I was hoping that you would catch on to. So when you look at, I'm not going to show those other company's products. I don't want to bring them up, but you're correct. Okay.
And on the Stouffer scale, you asked about step 7.
Yeah.
Of course, it's filtering light at different levels. And at a step 7, and I don't know who determined the step 7 was the correct one, but it seems to be.
Well, that's what Stauffer says. Okay. So that's,
Yeah. So for screen printing, you're filtering light, and you can still retain that 7th block when you wash out the image, which means without the scale, without the filter, we're allowing enough light to still penetrate and cure through the backside.
right.
And I'll tell you, yeah, and I
Have you ever
really use,
exposed to high density stencil?
yeah,
300
again,
microns, 400, 700?
okay, you can throw some of these rules out the window when you deal with
Exactly.
high density with some LED lights. I'm not seeing consistency.
Right.
When we have a very water resistant stencil, it doesn't give you the same result.
So those of us who have exposed high density stencils, you know, 1,000 microns or 1,200 microns, or even 300 or 400 microns, 200 microns, and the majority of people like Brian, for instance, that are dealing with 40 microns total, okay, because that's what he does with textile, more or less, Brian. It could be 80,
Right.
okay, but you know what I'm saying. It's definitely less than 100 micron stencil, okay, in most cases. So if you can, if that step 7 is thrown out the window on the thicker ones, okay, then now what we're discussing is how accurate is any neutral density filter used. If it doesn't work on the thick stencils, as it comes down, it works better as long as you're in a range of, you know, 20 to 80 microns, but it's still got a variance, you know?
And as Kevin said, I would only advise using it if you have nothing else to set up some type of proper range, but mostly to use it as consistency.
Yeah.
You tape it on your glass. It's in the same position every time. And if you start at 7, then next month it's 6, then it's 5, and it drops to 2, you know something's going on.
Yeah. What I look at is, you know, obviously if you got a thicker stencil, you're not going to hold fine detail. It's impossible because the light, you know, comes in at an angle through the mesh itself. Okay. So what I'm looking for is resistance and resolution in a stencil. Okay. I don't need these neutral density filters to tell me that. Okay. They're not telling me anything. I don't even need them. Okay. What I look for is, you know, the resolution that I want to hold in this screen and how thick that emulsion is, you know, the total stencil thickness, what I can hold, and what exposure is going to hold the proper resolution. And then I look for resistance, okay? And when I find those two, then I know that I have the right exposure. You understand? And I didn't use an exposure calculator or whatever you want to call this device to get to that, to get that answer. And I've got a better answer because I have my resilience and I have my resolution. Are we in agreement that that's what we're looking for? Resilience or resolution and
Durability.
resolution and resistance. Yeah. Not resilience, but resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and like I said, the exposure calculator is just going to give you a ballpark, and same with the
Right.
Stouffer scale. If
Right.
you're doing a step test, that's going to be far more accurate, obviously, because you can do it in very small increments. You know, you could do it in 5 light unit increments and find
Right.
what the best one really is, and hone that in and target down on that perfect exposure time. But most people don't take the time. And to be fair, you know, as we have exposure latitude built into these emulsions, it doesn't need to be right on for most people.
Right.
You know, it just has to be within that proper exposure window. But like I said earlier, when you're doing water-based and discharge, you want to be on the high side of that window.
Right.
I mean, honestly, there's different ways of figuring out your exposure time, but these are a really good tool to get you to that first initial point,
Right.
and then it needs to be fine-tuned from there.
Right. And why is it that, how many of those things do you sell a year? You know, I mean, you know, really, I don't want to know a number. I'm just, that's a, you know, I'm not,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
want that number.
we put a ton of them out there every single year.
Yeah, but
Cool. Everybody should have one, honestly.
I know, but why don't they? Why aren't people using them?
Because one exposure time is all you need for everything. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it. I'm going to be checking out. I need to take care of some other things. Don't know when I'll get to see you at a show, but I'll certainly tune in on your YouTube situation, which I've done in the past anyway.
Thank you.
Bill and Sue and Marty, thanks for coming along. Brian, see you again in 2 weeks. Other than that, thanks very much all for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
For the information.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.